The Iron Paradox. Chapter 1. The Void's Breath. The sector, known as the Eye of Vysk, was usually a symphony of light. Massive, crystalline structures orbited a binary star system, pulsing with a rhythmic flow of liquid light, the lifeblood of the Vysk Hegemony. Thousands of ships moved in perfect, silent harmony, connected by a neural web that allowed 1,000,000 minds to act as one. But in an instant, the music stopped.
Critical failure. Core fluid congealing. Neural link disconnected.
The robotic, synthesized voice of the Vysk dreadnought Sun-Eater stammered, its tone slowing into a distorted crawl before falling into total silence. The vibrant blue glow within the ship's translucent hull flickered, paled, and then turned into a sickening, muddy gray.
I cannot see. The light is cold,
gasped a Vysk navigator, his 6 limbs twitching uselessly against a console that had become nothing more than a slab of dead obsidian. Around him, his crewmates collapsed, their internal bioluminescence fading as the Null-Field swept through the sector like a phantom tide. It was a weapon of silence, a hole in reality that swallowed every photon, every bit of data, and every drop of energy. 10,000 miles away, on the ragged edge of the Null Zone, a different kind of heart was beating. It wasn't the hum of a quantum core or the pulse of liquid light. It was the heavy, rhythmic thrum of a 12-cylinder marine diesel engine modified for vacuum operation. The Hammerhead, a ship that looked more like a rusted industrial boiler than a spacecraft, shuddered with every stroke of its massive pistons. Inside the bridge, the air was thick with the smell of scorched oil, recycled oxygen, and the sharp tang of old tobacco. Captain Kaelen Grizz Thorne sat in a seat of cracked leather, his boots propped up on a console that featured not a single touchscreen. Instead, it was a forest of brass-rimmed dials, toggle switches, and hand-cranked wheels.
Spark, talk to me. The old girl's purring a bit too loud. Did the fuel injectors act up again?
Grizz asked, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate from his chest. He reached up to adjust his mechanical watch, the steady tick-tick-tick providing a comforting anchor in the silence of space.
Injectors are fine, Cap. It's the external sensors, or what's left of them. Look at the mercury gauges.
Mina Spark, Volkov replied, wiping a streak of black grease across her forehead. She pointed to a row of glass tubes filled with liquid mercury. The silvery metal was dancing violently, reacting to an invisible pressure that no digital sensor could even detect. Spark leaned over a workbench cluttered with iron wrenches, rolls of lead tape, and a disassembled analog radio. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering orange glow of the vacuum tubes that powered the Hammerhead's internal lights.
What in the hell is that? The Vysk fleet just disappeared from the periscope. 1 minute they were glowing like a damn Christmas tree. The next, nothing.
Grizz muttered, leaning forward and squinting into a heavy brass optical tube that protruded from the hull. It used a series of mirrors to show the outside world. Pure physics, no cameras, no digital lag.
It's a Null-Field, Grizz. A big one. The kind they talk about in the old Black Ops archives. It doesn't just jam signals. It collapses high-state energy. The Vysk use liquid light for everything. Their engines, their computers, even their blood. That field just turned their entire fleet into a collection of very expensive, very cold paperweights.
She explained, her fingers dancing over a mechanical calculator, the clicking of the gears rapid and sharp.
And we're still moving because...
the captain asked, a grim smile spreading through his thick gray beard.
Because we're flying a brick, Cap. A lead-lined, copper-shielded, fire-breathing brick. There isn't a single microchip on this ship newer than the 21st century. The Null-Field is looking for quantum vibrations to eat. It doesn't know what to do with a mechanical piston and a combustion spark.
Spark grinned, holding up a heavy steel wrench as if it were a holy relic. Suddenly, a low groaning sound echoed through the bridge. It wasn't the engine, it was the long-range acoustic receiver, a massive metal cone attached to the outer hull designed to pick up physical vibrations in the ether.
Antenne. Ate. Hegre. Workage. LP. 1.
A voice croaked through the steam-powered speakers, the signal converted into sound by a vibrating needle. It was the Vysk distress call, sent not via light waves, but via ancient, low-frequency radio, the only thing that could still crawl through the void.
They're dying out there, Spark. Those Vysk are soft. Without their network, they're just bugs in the dark.
Grizz stood up, the metal floor plates clanking under his heavy boots. He walked over to a large iron lever painted bright red.
What are you doing, Cap? If we go into the heart of that field, we're on our own. No backup, no navigation, nothing but our eyes and our gut.
Spark warned, though she was already reaching for her toolkit.
Exactly. My gut says those shiny bastards need a lesson in how the primitive stay alive. Engage the manual thrusters. We're going in.
Grizz roared, throwing the lever forward. A cloud of steam hissed from the vents, and the Hammerhead let out a primal, mechanical scream as it dived into the darkness of the null zone. Chapter 2. The Sound of Metal. The boundary of the Null-Field was invisible to the naked eye, but the Hammerhead felt it in its very bones. As the ship crossed the threshold, the last of the digital sensors, the backup navigation computer and the secondary comms, died with a pathetic, high-pitched whine. The glass screens turned into black mirrors, reflecting the sweat on Grizz's face. For a moment, there was a terrifying silence. Then, a series of mechanical clicks echoed through the bridge. One by one, the vacuum tubes behind the bulkheads began to glow, casting a warm, flickering amber light across the room. The needles on the analog pressure gauges began to sweep upward, vibrating with the pulse of the engine.
We're blind on radar, Cap, switching to the optical periscopes and the magnetic compass. Hold on, the gravity stabilizers are getting cranky.
Spark shouted over the rising groan of the hull. She was wrestling with a massive iron wheel, her muscles straining as she manually adjusted the ship's trim. The Hammerhead wasn't elegant. It was a beast of burden that fought back against its pilot.
I've got the helm. Give me more steam to the lateral thrusters. I can see a Vysk cruiser dead ahead, and she's drifting right into our path.
Grizz yelled, his hands gripping two massive wooden-handled levers. He poured through the brass eyepiece of the main periscope. In the dim, natural light of the distant binary stars, he could see the silhouette of a Vysk super-dreadnought. It was a masterpiece of alien engineering, now nothing more than a jagged mountain of glass, drifting aimlessly in the dark. The smell of hot metal and steam filled the bridge. Every time Grizz moved the levers, a series of heavy chains rattled deep within the ship, physically pulling the thruster valves open. It was a visceral, exhausting way to fly, a far cry from the neural link chairs the Vysk used. Suddenly, a massive shudder rocked the Hammerhead. A piece of crystalline debris, shattered from the alien ship's hull, had scraped along their starboard side. The sound was like a scream of tortured metal, echoing through the cramped corridors.
Hull integrity at 80%. We've got a leak in the ballast tanks and the manual pump is jammed.
Spark cried out, grabbing a heavy pipe wrench from her belt. She dove toward a hatch in the floor, her movements fast and practiced. Grizz didn't look back. His eyes were locked on the periscope. He saw the Vysk dreadnought looming closer. If they hit it, even the Hammerhead's lead-lined hull wouldn't save them. The Null-Field had stripped away the alien ship's navigation lights, making it a ghost in the graveyard of its own fleet.
Spark, I need that pump working 10 seconds ago. If we can't vent the ballast, we're going to belly flop into that cruiser.
The captain growled, his teeth clenched. He could feel the weight of the ship shifting, the momentum carrying them toward disaster. Below deck, Spark was knee-deep in freezing water and oily sludge. She reached into the machinery, her hands searching for the obstruction. Her fingers closed around a piece of jagged metal that had wedged itself into the gears. With a grunt of effort, she heaved, her muscles burning.
"Come on, you piece of junk!"
She screamed, putting her entire weight into the pull. With a sickening clack, the metal gave way. The gears began to grind again, and the sound of the pump's rhythmic thump, thump, thump brought a surge of relief. Back on the bridge, Grizz saw the ballast gauge needle drop. He slammed the levers forward. The Hammerhead groaned, its engines belching a thick cloud of soot into the void as it banked hard. The ship missed the Vysk cruiser by less than 50 meters, close enough for Grizz to see the frozen, terrified faces of the alien crew through their observation ports.
Too close. Way too close. Spark, get up here. We're approaching Aegis Prime, the source of the field.
Grizz breathed, wiping the sweat from his eyes with his sleeve. He checked his mechanical watch. They had been in the field for only 20 minutes, but it felt like hours of physical combat. Out the viewport, the station appeared. Aegis Prime was a colossal ring of black stone and liquid light conduits, but now it was dark, save for a strange, pulsing violet glow at its center, the Null generator. Surrounding it were the sentinels, sleek, bird-like drones that guarded the station. In the Null-Field, they should have been dead. But they weren't. They were moving with a slow, mechanical precision.
Cap, those drones. They aren't using neural links. Look at the way they move. It's jerky, rhythmic. They've got clockwork backups, mechanical brains.
Spark said, climbing back onto the bridge, her clothes soaked and smelling of diesel. She looked through the secondary scope, her expression turning grim.
Mechanical or not, they're in our way. Load the harpoon and prime the kinetic cannons. We aren't here to dance. We're here to break things.
Grizz ordered, his hand moving to the firing grip, a heavy iron trigger connected by a physical cable to the guns outside. The Hammerhead pushed forward, a primitive predator entering a garden of broken glass, ready to show the galaxy that the old ways didn't just survive, they conquered. Chapter 3. The Cold Hard Truth. The Hammerhead made contact with Aegis Prime not with a whisper of docking magnets, but with a bone-jarring metallic thud. Grizz had to time the approach perfectly, using the manual thrusters to counteract the station's slight, uncontrolled wobble. The magnetic clamps, heavy, rusted iron blocks powered by a simple direct current battery, slammed into the station's sleek obsidian hull with a shower of sparks.
Hard dock confirmed. Spark, get the atmospheric tester. I don't trust those Vysk air scrubbers as far as I can throw them, and without power, they're probably just pumping out poison.
Grizz said, unbuckling his leather restraint straps. He stood up, his joints popping. He reached into a locker and pulled out 2 heavy, pressurized suits. They weren't the sleek, skin-tight thermal layers of the hegemony. They were bulky, canvas and lead monstrosities lined with thick sheepskin wool.
Air is thin, Cap. Oxygen is at 12% and dropping. The temperature inside the station is already 30 below. Their liquid light heaters must have frozen solid the moment the field hit.
Spark replied, checking the brass dial on a handheld sensor. She pulled her heavy goggles down over her eyes and shouldered a massive rucksack that clattered with the weight of steel tools. They stepped through the airlock, the heavy iron door hissing as it sealed behind them. Inside Aegis Prime, the silence was absolute. It was a cathedral of dead light. The walls, usually pulsing with the vibrant blue of Vysk technology, were dark and dull, like cold charcoal. Every few seconds the station groaned, a deep, tectonic sound of metal contracting in the extreme cold. Their flashlights, powered by heavy-duty alkaline batteries, cut through the darkness in narrow, dusty beams. As they moved down the main corridor, they saw the first of the Vysk. The alien was slumped against a console, its 6 limbs curled inward in a defensive posture. The central lens in its chest was dark, and the faint glow of its internal fluids had turned into a muddy, frozen sludge.
Look at him. He's not dead. Not yet. He's in a crystalline coma. Their biology is so tied to their tech that when the power goes out, their hearts just stop. They're like clocks that forgot how to tick.
Spark whispered, her breath blooming in a thick white cloud inside her helmet. She reached out to touch the alien's carapace, but Grizz pulled her back.
We aren't here for a rescue mission, Spark. If we don't drop that Null-Field, every Vysk in this sector is going to stay frozen forever. Focus on the door.
Grizz pointed his light toward the end of the hall. A massive, shimmering gate blocked their path. It was a phase-shifted barrier, a marvel of Vysk physics that existed in 2 dimensions at once. Normally, it would be a gateway to the inner sanctum. Now, without power to regulate the phase shift, it was stuck in a state of semi-solid glass.
It's beautiful, and it's completely unhackable. There isn't a computer in the galaxy that can talk to a frozen phase gate.
Spark said, admiring the swirling, iridescent patterns trapped within the barrier. She reached into her bag and pulled out 3 blocks of industrial thermite and a heavy, short-handled sledgehammer.
Good thing we didn't bring a computer then.
Grizz muttered, stepping back to give her room. Spark worked with methodical precision. She scraped a small notch into the base of the gate with a diamond-tipped file, then packed the thermite into the groove. She ignited the fuse with a mechanical striker, a simple flint and steel spark. The flare of light was blinding, a violent chemical reaction that ignored the Null-Field's rules. The extreme heat caused the perfect Vysk material to scream and crack.
Stand back!
She yelled, swinging the sledgehammer with both hands. The heavy iron head struck the weakened center of the gate with the force of a falling star. The sound was deafening, a sharp, crystalline explosion that echoed through the silent station. The phase-shifted gate didn't just break. It shattered into a million non-dimensional shards. The unbreakable defense of the Vysk Hegemony lay on the floor like common gravel.
Percussive maintenance at its finest. Nice work, Spark.
Grizz said, stepping over the debris. He unholstered a heavy 12-gauge shotgun, the slide racking with a satisfying mechanical clack-clack. As they moved into the inner sanctum, the sound of the station changed. The groaning of the metal was joined by a new noise, a rhythmic, metallic clicking. It sounded like 1,000 grandfather clocks, all ticking at once.
Cap, do you hear that? That's not the hull. That's clockwork.
Spark whispered, her hand hovering over a pouch of grenades. Out of the shadows emerged the Sentinels. They were 4-legged machines, their bodies made of polished brass and gears. Unlike the Vysk ships, these were designed with a primitive mechanical backup system. Their eyes were simple optical lenses, and their movements were driven by coiled springs and pneumatic pistons. They were the station's last line of defense, relics of a time before liquid light, built for the exact scenario that was now unfolding.
They're ancient, clockwork guards for a digital empire. They've been waiting for a day when the lights went out.
Grizz said, leveling his shotgun. The lead sentinel hissed, steam venting from its joints as it raised a sharp mechanical claw.
Target identified. Intruders detected.
The sentinel's voice was a series of recorded phonemes, played back by a spinning wax cylinder inside its chest. It moved with a terrifying, jerky speed, its gears screaming in the cold.
Spark, get to the core. I'll handle the antiques.
Grizz roared, his finger tightening on the trigger. The first blast of the shotgun lit up the dark corridor, the lead pellets ready to test the strength of Vysk brass. Chapter 4. Ballistics vs. Beauty. The first sentinel lunged, its brass limbs clattering against the obsidian floor with the frantic rhythm of a sewing machine. As it moved, a shimmering veil of violet energy flickered into existence around its chassis, a standard-issue Vysk deflector shield. It was designed to dissipate high-energy plasma, refractive lasers, and particle beams. It was a masterpiece of subatomic engineering. Grizz didn't blink. He braced the stock of his 12-gauge trench sweeper against his shoulder and squeezed the trigger. The roar of the shotgun was a physical blow in the cramped, silent hallway. A cloud of blue fire erupted from the barrel, and a spray of heavy lead buckshot tore through the air. The Sentinel's shield didn't even flicker. It wasn't that the shield failed, it simply wasn't programmed to care about slow-moving, uncharged masses of solid lead. The buckshot passed through the energy field like it wasn't there, slamming into the drone's intricate brass clockwork with the force of a sledgehammer.
Unexpected. Kinetic. Impact. System. Trow.
The drone's wax cylinder voice croaked as its internal gears were pulverized. A shower of tiny springs and brass cogs sprayed across the floor, and the machine collapsed into a heap of useless metal.
Their shields are tuned for light, Grizz. They don't even see the lead. It's like throwing rocks at a rainbow.
Spark yelled, her voice tight with adrenaline. She ducked behind a structural pillar as two more Sentinels rounded the corner, their mechanical eyes spinning wildly to calibrate for the new threat.
Then let's give him a whole lot of rainbows to deal with. Spark, get to that side panel. I'll keep him busy.
Grizz roared, racking the slide of his shotgun with a sharp clack-clack. He stepped out into the open, a mountain of canvas and leather, and began a methodical, rhythmic advance. Each shot from his gun was a drumbeat of human defiance. Boom. Another Sentinel's leg was sheared off by a slug. Boom. A third drone's optical sensor was shattered into glass dust. The air in the corridor was rapidly filling with the acrid, sulphurous smell of gunpowder, a primitive scent that had no place in this temple of high technology. But the station began to vibrate with a deeper, more ominous tone. From a hidden ceiling hatch, something much larger descended. It was a heavy Sentinel, a beast of a machine the size of a small tank. It didn't have the delicate brass limbs of the others. Its body was encased in thick, overlapping plates of dark, void iron, a material designed to withstand the crushing pressure of gas giants.
Cap, we've got a problem. My 9mm won't even scratch that thing. It's solid armor.
Spark cried out, firing a desperate burst from her submachine gun. The bullets sparked harmlessly off the heavy Sentinel's chest, leaving nothing but shallow dents. The heavy Sentinel raised a massive hydraulic arm. It didn't fire a laser. It released a high-pressure jet of liquid nitrogen, aiming to flash freeze the intruders. Grizz dove to the side, the freezing mist crystallizing the leather of his jacket instantly.
It's too thick for the guns. All right. Spark, toss me the big key.
Grizz shouted, his eyes narrowing. He dropped his shotgun, the weapon clattering on the floor.
The big key? Grizz, that's suicide.
She yelled, but she reached into her pack and pulled out a 4-foot-long solid steel pry bar, reinforced with a tungsten carbide tip. She slid it across the floor toward him. Grizz caught the bar mid-slide and stood up. The heavy Sentinel was reloading its pneumatic tanks, the sound of wheezing bellows filling the air. This was the weakness of mechanical systems. Recovery time. Grizz didn't wait. He charged, his heavy boots thundering. He didn't swing at the armor. He looked for the joints, the exposed gaskets where the hydraulic fluid moved. With a grunt of pure, raw effort, he jammed the steel bar into the machine's shoulder assembly.
Shah! Work for me, you overgrown toaster!
Grizz screamed, his muscles bulging as he put his entire body weight into the lever. The percussive maintenance of a desperate man. The sound was a sickening, metallic crunch. The steel bar bent, but the Sentinel's internal pressure seal snapped first. A jet of high-pressure hydraulic oil sprayed out, coating Grizz in black fluid. The machine's arm went limp, its gears grinding against each other until they seized with a final, terminal spark. Grizz leaned against the dead machine, his chest heaving. He wiped the oil from his face, leaving a dark smear across his beard.
I can't believe that worked. You actually crowbarred a tank to death.
Spark said, emerging from cover, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe.
Physics is physics, Spark. It doesn't matter how pretty the machine is. If you stop the gears, you stop the heart. Now, where's that commander?
Grizz asked, picking up his shotgun and checking the remaining shells. They turned the final corner and entered the command sanctum. At the center of the room, standing before a massive dark glass console, was a Vysk, but this one was different. He wore ceremonial robes of deep crimson, and his chest lens glowed with a frantic, flickering violet light. In his hand, he held a physical device, a heavy iron lever connected to a set of explosives wired directly into the station's core.
Stop, humans. You do not understand the purity of the silence.
The rogue commander croaked, his voice trembling with a mix of fanaticism and the encroaching cold. His hand hovered over the lever.
I understand one thing, pal. You're holding a manual switch because you know your fancy neural links won't work in here. You wanted the dark? Well, you're about to find out how much we love the dark.
Grizz said, stepping forward, the metal floor groaning under his weight as the final confrontation began. Chapter 5. The Human Edge. The air in the command sanctum was so cold it felt like inhaling needles. Frozen condensation drifted through the air like diamond dust, catching the flickering orange light of the humans' battery-powered lamps. Commander Zalth, the Vysk extremist, stood before the core override, his 4 upper limbs trembling violently. His obsidian carapace was covered in a thin layer of frost, and the violet glow in his chest was barely a heartbeat.
You are anomalies. The galaxy has become too loud, too connected. The Null-Field is purity.
Zalth wheezed, his voice sounding like dry parchment rubbing together. He clutched the manual detonator, a crude iron handle he had rigged to the station's core, with a grip that was failing by the second.
Purity? You call this purity? Your people are freezing to death in their own ships because they forgot how to build a heater that doesn't need a Wi-Fi signal.
Grizz spat, his boots crunching on the frost-covered floor as he closed the distance. He didn't raise his shotgun. He didn't need to. In this environment of absolute technological death, the frail alien was no match for a human born on a world that actually had winters.
Grizz, look at the core pressure. He's already started the cascade. If that lever goes down, the Null-Field won't just stay on, it'll expand. It'll swallow the entire system, and every living thing in it will be silenced forever.
Spark shouted, her hands flying over a series of manual valves near the base of the central pillar. She was trying to bypass the digital locks, her fingers numbing inside her heavy gloves.
It is necessary.
Zalth screamed, his singular chest lens pulsing with a final, desperate surge of violet light. He threw his weight against the detonator lever. Grizz lunged. He didn't use a clever gadget or a tactical maneuver. He used 1,000 generations of pursuit predator instinct. He slammed his heavy shoulder into the Vysk's chest, the impact sounding like a hammer hitting a hollow log. The alien, built for the low-gravity elegance of liquid-light ships, flew backward, his spindly limbs flailing as he hit the obsidian wall. The detonator handle remained upright, but only because it was jammed by the ice. Grizz grabbed the Vysk by his robes, lifting the frail creature effortlessly.
Look at me, Commander. You spent a century building a god, and the moment it went dark, you turned into a bug. We never stopped being animals, and animals know how to survive the winter.
Grizz growled, dropping the alien like a piece of trash. He turned toward the primary venting lever, a massive 6-foot-long iron bar designed for emergency atmospheric purging.
I can't do it, Cap. The manual valves are rusted shut. It hasn't been cycled in 300 years. I need more leverage.
Spark cried out, wrestling with a circular iron wheel that wouldn't budge even an inch. Her face was bright red from the effort, steam rising from her skin into the freezing air. Grizz didn't hesitate. He grabbed a heavy iron pipe from a nearby cooling rack and jammed it into the spokes of the wheel.
"Together, on 3!
He roared, his voice echoing through the silent, dead station. Spark grabbed one side of the pipe, Grizz the other. They braced their heavy boots against the floor plates, their muscles coiling and straining. This was no longer a battle of hackers or starships. It was a battle of raw, biological torque.
1!
Grizz's face turned purple, the veins in his neck bulging like thick ropes.
2!
Spark's teeth were gritted so hard they threatened to crack. The sound of their heavy breathing was the only thing alive in the room.
3! Pull!
He bellowed. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a scream of tortured metal that sounded like a dying god, the wheel began to turn. Creak, clunk. The manual purge valves groaned open, and a massive surge of pressurized gas hissed through the pipes.
Emergency. Venting. Initiated. Null capacitors. Draining.
A low-power, analog voice box announced. The message played back through a mechanical diaphragm. Suddenly, the oppressive silence of the Null-Field began to lift. Outside the station, the violet clouds of the field started to swirl and dissipate. The vacuum tubes on the Hammerhead brightened, and then, for the first time in hours, the high-tech lights of the Hegemony fleet in the distance began to flicker back to life. The blue liquid light began to flow again, warming the veins of the Vysk and waking their computers from their frozen slumber. Grizz stood back, his chest heaving, his hands trembling from the massive exertion. He looked down at his mechanical watch. The second hand was still ticking, steady and indifferent to the chaos around it.
We did it, Cap. The net is back up. I can hear the Vysk ships screaming on the long-range comms. They're confused, terrified, and alive.
Spark said, sliding down the side of the pillar to sit on the floor, her energy completely spent. She wiped a mix of sweat and grease from her eyes.
Let 'em scream. Maybe now they'll realize that their perfect future is built on a foundation of glass.
Grizz said, walking over to the observation port. He watched as the Sun-Eater dreadnought began to glow with its majestic blue light once more. He looked at his own reflection in the glass, a man covered in oil, soot, and sweat, wearing clothes that belonged in a museum. As the Vysk fleet recovered, a message flickered onto a small backup screen in the sanctum. It was the High Admiral of the Hegemony, his image shaky as his systems rebooted.
Unknown. Terran. Craft. You have saved our existence. How did you operate in the void?
The Admiral asked, his 4 eyes wide with a confusion that would take generations to settle.
We didn't operate in the void, Admiral. We just brought our own tools. And next time you build a galaxy, try using a few more bolts and a little less magic.
Grizz replied, his voice gruff but satisfied. He turned his back on the glowing consoles and the alien commander, walking toward the exit. The galaxy would remember this day. They would remember that when the light of progress failed and the universe turned cold and silent, it wasn't the most advanced race that saved them. It was the humans, the ones who never forgot the weight of a hammer, the heat of a fire, and the simple, unbreakable power of the iron. Because in a universe of glass and light, the man with the wrench is king.